If you're a dog owner like I am who loves to cross the border with your furry companion, you should be aware that there's some new restrictions the United States will be imposing beginning August the 1st. Initially, these rules were much stricter, but due to pushback by the Canadian government, our friends south of the border have eased up on some of those mandates, allowing a 9-month grace period for review. BCN's Jeannette Rocher has the details.
Drop it. Blaze, this way.
Meet Bandit and Blaze, two Australian shepherds.
Blaze is 8 and Bandit's 7.
Besides catching sticks, these dogs are avid travelers.
I travel with the dogs to the States quite a bit. We've been to Montana, Kalispell, Yellowstone, a lot in the last 7 or 8 years. They've been in cars since they were 8 weeks old.
But their owner/travel companion, Dan Birdie, became alarmed when he heard about the strict rules the United States had planned to impose on Canadian dog owners when crossing the border with their pets.
I was astonished that we'd have to go through that just to bring dogs across the border.
Up until July 22nd, according to the Center for Disease Control, not only did dogs crossing the border have to now be microchipped, but also have an export document signed by a licensed veterinarian and have a completed CDC dog import form. The main reason? To control the spread of rabies.
From my understanding, both countries hold the same certification for rabies, which is 0 cases. So each country has achieved that for dog rabies. So I don't see any reason to change the policy now. Canada's no worse than the US in that regard.
And due to a lot of pushback from the Canadian government, including Health Minister Mark Holland, this week the CDC announced an easing of these restrictions for Canadian travelers with their 4-legged companions.
It's fixing a problem that doesn't exist.
Holland met with officials from the Center for Disease Control and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, in Washington, D.C. recently to discuss the policies. He was hoping for either an exemption or at the very least a grace period.
I think that we are both countries that have done a phenomenal job at keeping rabies out of our country and making sure that our dogs are safe.
And on July 22nd, the CDC sent out a statement in response saying, quote, "The CDC values the feedback received from various countries, industry partners, and the public. CDC simplified the process for meeting requirements for dogs arriving from dog rabies-free or low-risk countries." According to the CDC website, here are the new entry requirements for dogs from dog rabies-free or low-risk countries, including Canada. Starting on August 1st, dogs entering or returning to the United States that have been only in low-risk countries in the past 6 months must have completed the CDC dog import form. In addition to having a receipt for this form, dogs must appear healthy upon arrival, they must be at least 6 months old at the time of entry, and must have a microchip that can be detected with a universal scanner to identify them. Something that could still add a bit of cost to the travel budget.
So it's going to cost about $300 for both dogs to be microchipped.
One thing that won't cost a penny, though, is the dog import form. The free form can be found on the CDC website, and a receipt will be emailed to the dog owner upon submission of the form. It's valid for 6 months from when it's issued and can be used for multiple entries into the U.S. as long as the dog has not been in a high-risk country in the past 6 months. Each dog must have its own form. Cool. The forms can be completed on the day of travel or up to 6 months before travel.
Our appreciation of the changes, because the changes that were made are exceptionally helpful. I frankly would say that without those changes, this would be a much worse situation.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeannette Rocher.
Good boy.